Hi, welcome back to Projects with Everyday Dave. It's getting to be winter. You can see some snow on the ground. It's kind of a cloudy, hazy morning, but we're still producing power. And actually, I have this new test rig over here I'm doing some analysis on to optimize my system a little more. Stick around to the end and I'll explain what I'm doing with that. But a little hint, on a cloudy, hazy day like this, my west-facing and south-facing array are producing the same amount of power. It's only when the sun comes up that things change. And that analysis is looking to be very interesting. But today, I'm going to talk to you about two things that I have learned over the last couple of years that I could have done differently to save thousands of dollars on my system installation and pay it off much, much faster. So I'm going to share that information with you so you can save the money that I wasn't able to save. And as I do more and more research on how to expand my array and optimize it in every way, I'll bring you those details. So if you like this information, be sure and hit the like button so it gets shared out to others. Let's look at the numbers. Okay, we're going to look at 6 options here, 7 if you include the turnkey install, all various configurations that will save money on my original configuration. I did a detailed review of every part that I purchased and installed on my solar system, and I'll put that link in the description below if you want to check that out. These will be a little bit more general, and I updated the cost of some of the parts like the inverters and the optimizers to the current prices that they are today. So let's look at each one of these options and then I'll summarize them at the end. The first system we're going to look at is just the turnkey install. Now all of these systems are going to be basically 9 kilowatts. There'll be some slight variations depending on the configuration, and they're all going to consider a 11 cent per kilowatt hour rate for electricity. The yearly savings is pretty close. Most of them will be around this $1,400 range. Now for the turnkey system, of course the most expensive, starting out at $24,000, but you get the biggest tax rebate of $6,000 because it starts with a bigger number. Now that gives us a final cost of $17,760 and a 13-year payoff, which is really why I ended up doing a DIY. Now you still get an 8% return on investment, which isn't bad. And if you consider the average person's total income tax with federal, local, state, and so on is about 22.4%, that equates to an equivalent 10% return. If you were to put that money in a CD, for instance, you would need to earn about 10% on it in order to have the same payback, since you don't have to pay taxes on the saving that you get from your solar array. So that's another benefit to producing your own power. You don't have to earn the money to buy it. All of these systems I'm going to compare have some slightly updated numbers for the inverters and optimizers because the cost has changed a little bit since I installed my system. If you want to know exactly what I spent to install my system, I'll put a link in the description below to my detailed analysis, but for this we're going to use some fairly high level numbers and not go into that level of detail. Let's look at the first DIY system. Now this is the system that I installed. It has P400 optimizers, 24 of them for the 24 panels, and a 7.6 kilowatt SolarEdge inverter. The savings is $1,355, just like the turnkey install, and this one used Mission Solar 375 watt panels. They have a full 25-year warranty, and they were $262 a piece for a total of $6,288. Now the solar panels end up being a huge portion of the cost of the system. So with this and the optimizers and the inverter, the racking, wiring, trenching permits, the only thing I don't include in here is the gravel because it wasn't in the turnkey install. That gives us almost $14,000 for our cost and a $3,000 rebate, which gives us a $7,436 savings doing it myself over that turnkey install. Now it's $10,000 cheaper, but since you get a bigger rebate on the bigger number, the actual savings is only $7,436, but that's still pretty good, and it dramatically reduces the payback period to 7 years, and it also makes a significant improvement in the return. A 13% return is a pretty good investment. So now let's look at the next one. Now many of you have commented that I didn't need to use optimizers because my array is not in an area that has shade, and since it's not on a structure, I don't need rapid shutdown at the module level. So I don't have to have those optimizers. I could have used a couple of strings at a high voltage and used the same wiring that I did. In order to do that, you would need just a regular string inverter. There's no sponsorship for this video. These are all just things that I researched on my own. I just put a Sunny Boy inverter in here. It's a popular one. You could look up all kinds of different string inverters and pick the one that makes the most sense for you. But the cost of it isn't that different. You just don't have to pay for the optimizers. The savings is almost entirely eliminating the optimizers and then just a few dollars on the inverter itself. Now I did reduce the yearly savings slightly by about 2% based on the fact that there is not module level optimization. There's not a whole lot of data out there on that. In the future, maybe I'll hook up a string inverter and I'll compare them directly back to back and see what the difference is, but just conservatively, let's say it's 2%. That makes a significant improvement in our cost, brings it down to under $12,000. We still get a $3,000 rebate on that, and that saves us an additional $1,500 over our original DIY install. It reduces our payback slightly down to below 7 years, and now our return on investment is between 15 and 19%, depending on how you want to look at that. So significant improvement from the start off, and still have full warranty on everything, just don't apply the optimizer. Now our third option here is using used solar panels. Let's say that you want the module level control or you need module level shutdown because you're putting it on a roof. The best way to have a significant reduction in cost is to apply used solar panels. I have found a great source for that through Santan Solar. I'll put a link in the description below. If you use the link below, it's a small benefit to this channel at no extra cost to you, so please do use that if you plan to buy them. But in this case, I'm showing the Jinko solar panels that I purchased for my friend's roof install. Now, they don't have any more of those, but I'll do another analysis here in a minute with some panels that they do have in stock. The important factor here is, with a used panel, you can dramatically reduce the cost of the solar panel portion with minimal impact to the actual production. In this case, those panels I tested, and they produced as much or more than my current brand new panels. So if I kept all of my inverter and optimizer components and just changed out the solar panels to used panels, then I would save $2,500 on the install over my original DIY, and would give me a 17% to a 22% return on my investment, and the payback is now less than 6 years. So this would have been another great choice. But we can make it even cheaper. In this scenario, I'm using a brand new solar panel that Santan Solar has at discounted rates, and these are half-cut 530 watt panel. Now the unique thing about this is, even though the panels themselves are fairly expensive, you don't need as many to get the same power. In fact, this is 9.5 kilowatt hours, even more power than the array that we were looking at before. We get a good savings on the solar panels, eliminate the optimizer, so we don't need to include that cost in our roll-up, use a string inverter instead of the optimizers, and because we need less racking, we can see a reduction in cost in racking. Now, I didn't get this quoted, and in fact, someone commented on one of my other videos that the price of racking has gone up, probably because the price of steel has gone up. But in this case, just to keep apples to apples comparison, I prorated the cost of the racking based on the number of panels, so it would be about a $500 savings. Now, all told, this has new panels, new inverter, less racking, less work, more power, your yearly savings goes up, and it's still a cost down from the previous scenario, saving $3,000 over my original DIY, bringing our payback to nearly 5 years, and our return on investment is somewhere between 19 and 25%. So that would be a really great solution, but we can get it even cheaper. In this next option, we combine the use of used panels with a string inverter, which saves us even more money. Now with these used panels, we go back to 24 panels because the wattage isn't as high, so our racking system is back to its original cost, but the panels are cheaper, and we drop the optimizers and use a string inverter, and with that we're able to save $4,000 off the cost of the system. At this point, we're down to pretty close to $8,500, significant reduction from what I originally spent, and the payback is less than 5 years now, and we're getting 21 to 27% return on our investment. So that's way better than what I did before. Now, the next system I'm going to show you is even cheaper, but the payback isn't better. And that's because the production is a little less than 9 kilowatts in this case. So in this case, I'm using a used solar panel from Santan Solar. I'll leave a link in the description below. These are 300 watt panels, but they're only $75. So they're super cheap. Now we need more of them in order to get nearly the same output, so we'll put in 30, which is going to increase the cost of our racking by about $500 because we need more racking, so there's a little more stuff to handle. But we'll keep the string inverter because we're looking for minimized cost here. Now that brings our system down to just over $8,000, $4,140 cheaper than my original install. Now the payback on that one, still under 5 years, and the return is 20 to 26% on the investment. Now the yearly savings, because it's a little bit smaller system, is a little bit less, and so the payback doesn't turn out to be quite as good. Now let's look at a summary of all those together to help you decide what would make the most sense in your situation. Okay, here's the summary. Now I'm going to start at the bottom. If you're looking for just the lowest cost system that you can do, right now Santan Solar has these 300 watt panels for 75 bucks a piece, super cheap. I'll put a link in the description below for you, especially if you're doing your own racking and you don't have to get engineering support for 90-mile-an-hour winds, you're in an off-grid situation or something like that. This would be a really great solution. The payback is almost the same as this one with the best overall return, and it's the lowest cost out there. Now, if I were doing this again, I would go with used panels and a string inverter. That would be the best overall return, and it would have met my needs perfectly. Now, I'm glad that I used optimizers on my system because it's allowed me to collect all kinds of data and give you feedback and compare panels and do all that. But if I wasn't doing that, this would be the best solution for me. Now, if you have to have panel level shutdown, you're putting it on your roof or something like that, the best thing to do is go with some used panels from Santan Solar, or if you have another location where you can get used panels, please put it in the comments below so everybody else can get that information. But in that case, you reduce one of the biggest costs of your system, the solar panels themselves, which have very few failures because there's not a lot of components. They just sit out there and they have some slight degradation over time. But you can see from the video I'll link below where I analyzed these panels side by side with mine. They produce the same, if not more, than my current panels. So I think used panels is a really great way to go to reduce your cost if you can't change any other part. I hope this information's been useful for you to compare all the different kind of things that are available and how to tweak the cost of the system that you're putting in. Now let's step outside and take a look at that west-facing array, and I'll explain what I'm doing with it. All right, I told you I'd give you a sneak preview of what I'm doing with these panels here. Now I'm going to take some energy readings for the power curve that these panels put out for the 6-month period from the winter solstice to the summer solstice and compare that to the panels that I have facing south. My expectation is these west-facing panels will produce more power later in the afternoon, allowing me to broaden the power curve on my inverter. Since my inverter is overpowered by the panels I have, I get clipping in the middle of the day. But if I can face some panels east and some panels west, that way I'll be able to broaden the curve and make the inverter produce power for more of the day, and hopefully more power overall that way than if these panels were just facing south. So I'll collect data on this. When I get it all analyzed, I'll bring it to you and see if it really makes sense to face some in each direction or just face them all south. Hopefully this video has been helpful. If so, hit the like button, and I'll see you next time.